Hello and welcome to episode, I believe it's 35, of My Dog Will Eat My Face. This podcast is going to be very difficult for me to do because I've been experiencing rather new and severe symptoms lately of my condition, my congestive heart failure. I've never had symptoms like this before, so something's new, something's happening in my mind. In short, I've been experiencing full body pain, and I put that pain at a 9.5 on the usual 1 to 10 scale doctors give you. I only don't give it a 10 because I reserved that spot for when I broke my leg, when I basically severed my femur at the ball inside the hip and had to go through emergency reconstructive hip surgery. That, I think, took the cake at 10. Probably up there, though, with maybe torture by the Mujahideen. So I'll put that at a 10 and put those up there. So that's why this is only a 9.5. Anyway, doing every little thing was near impossible for me. Any movement, even chewing was difficult, swallowing was difficult. When I would swallow, my esophagus would hurt the whole way down. My fingers hurt if I were just touching something. Everything, and I really mean everything, was just in severe pain. And I couldn't explain it whatsoever. It's not like I, of course, did anything the day before. I woke up like any other day, and this is how I was. So, for this podcast, I'm going to try to explain that experience a little bit. And my frustration, honestly, with hospice care. And what I suspect was the culprit as of today, based off my own research and what some others have said to me in other venues, in support groups online, and in conversations with my doctors at the hospital, not with hospice. So I'll try to share those today as well. So, first of all, the pain. Obviously, I've described it, I think, pretty effectively so far. It felt like I competed in a triathlon and also lost a bar fight the night before, which is something I know from experience. So I know how that feels. It was, in short, muscular pain is how I would describe it. So every little fraction of my body was in pain, and movement in particular was just excruciating. It would take me 10 to 20 grueling minutes to get out of bed. And just one time my feet touched the floor and I screamed in pain. Not expecting that level of pain just from my feet touching the carpet on the floor. Just that little action, a touch, not like I pounced out of bed like a ninja. You know, it was stepping out of bed, but just the touch and friction of my foot on the carpet caused me to scream in literal pain. So, having had enough, I called my hospice 24-hour service and requested that they help me out. Explained to them what's happening, and what they did is they sent a nurse right away who promptly did nothing. I jokingly call the hospice team to do nothings. They don't do anything. She came by. She conducted a vitals analysis, which didn't show anything. They never do. And said I could take an extra pain pill safely after she made a phone call to somebody else. I thought to myself, no kidding. That was the first thing I tried because I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to wait for my doctor to approve me to take an extra pain pill when I'm in this level of pain, thank you. I'm going to do it. And that's the most she could come up with. So there's nothing more that she could do or that anyone in hospice could do for me. It being the weekend was part of the problem because I couldn't get to my main weekly team. And because of that, the weekend folks didn't want to do like a permanent change to my drug retinue or do something that was profound. But regardless, I was still in this hideous amount of pain. I was seeing really no solution to it. I got no solution from hospice. They literally just came and left and said, do what you've already done. There's nothing more that we can do. And I'm just thinking to myself, there is something wrong. There is something seriously wrong with me. This pain is not normal. I mean, yes, I want the pain treated, but also there's a fear. This is an abnormal situation. This doesn't just happen. This isn't a typical thing to wake up to. I could tell my body was screaming at me that something was really wrong. And being in heart failure and in hospice care, that kind of freaks me out that my body's telling me that. That tells me that something is seriously wrong and something needs to be addressed pronto. And they treated it like I had a headache or heartburn. And that was it. And still, so I was left there alone with my little dog, just in severe pain, and now freaking out, knowing that this is an indicator that something is terribly wrong here. It's not just random pain. And so I had very little options left. And I had to stare into those cold, low, sad options shortly after that. So I looked at calling 911, unfortunately. But I have a little dog, as many of you know, and he needs care arranged before I could possibly leave him. So I text a few people, like a good puppy daddy, mostly get no reply, and eventually I just sulk and collapse to my fate of grueling, horrific pain and really no help to watch the pooch, which would allow me to at least go to the emergency room. So I sat through the whole night and into the next day pretty miserable. I wasn't checking my phone any further after that little exchange and really just stayed in bed because I gave up seeking help as the hours passed by. When suddenly, next day, around 2 p.m., I hear frantic banging on my door. Of course, I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody called the police or something. Banging on the door is never a good sound in my experience. So I gruelingly, slowly try to start getting up to get to the door, but I'm just so slow because I'm in extreme pain. I call out, "Who is it?" And turns out it's my CNH and her husband, because I asked them if they would be able to watch my dog. But I asked them, you must see, 18 hours prior or something like that. I got no response on my phone. So I don't know why they decided a good way to handle that is to hop in the car hours upon hours later and drive to my apartment and bang on the door as if you're saving the day. 9 hours, I guess. Whatever it was after I sent my first text and got no response. The dog was freaking out. I was just like, WTF, mate. And they said, finally, we better leave. And took off. Very helpful. Very, very helpful. Odd. They might be listening to this podcast, so I do admit it was done out of love. It just was not very helpful to come storming through the door 9 hours later and cause a huge ruckus and freak the dog out and freak me out and cause a huge scene when they could have replied to my text message or called me and asked if I needed care. But they panicked, I guess, and what they did was done out of love. Subsequently, we pass on into today. My pain is reducing a little bit. It is starting to decline just on its own. I am taking pain medication for it, of course, but the medication I don't think is reducing it. I think that whatever this is just passing its course. So I did some research online as to what the heck this could be. And the most interesting reply and evidence that I found was it could be an indicator of right ventricle failure. Now, I found this very interesting because this actually happened before. Years ago, I went into right ventricle failure. It was different symptoms then. I just felt severely short of breath. But I called 911 and had a strong sense of doom around me, like something was seriously wrong. I had no pain at that time. But who knows? There's so many factors that go into this. The heart plays so many roles, and especially with respect to the muscles. And I have so many strange configurations in my anatomy. I have artificial stents, 3 stents at least, connecting my heart to my lungs. I have an artificial shunt that's over 40 years old. And I've got peripheral vessels grown all around the vessels that were not found in my body, that was missing at birth, to basically provide the blood flow that would otherwise be there. For example, I have no femoral arteries anymore. They both became colluded and were reabsorbed by the body. And in replace of them, I just have a big mass of peripheral arteries. Doctors don't know what goes to what's vital, what's not. So surgery and intervention is really not an option when you have cases like that, where the peripheral blood vessels grown by the body to survive are the only things keeping it kicking, and you just have no idea what this anatomy is like. So that's me. So it could be anyone's guess. I said I think the best cardiologist in the world would have a hard time even guessing what the cause was of this pain. But something absolutely happened, and that's what I reiterated with my nurse, my hospice nurse, who I just saw not that long ago. I definitely feel and felt that something occurred in my body to cause all this widespread pain, severe pain. It wasn't caused by a fall down some stairs. I didn't get into a fist fight. I didn't get blown out of a cannon. I wasn't reporting live from the Ukraine. Nothing like that was happening. So it's a mystery. It's a mystery as to what actually caused this to happen. But it follows the same pattern of the right ventricle failure that I experienced, in that it hits, it's scary, it's terrifying, it kind of peaks, and then in my case, it slowly got better on its own and cleared up and returned to normal feelings. And this experience is really following that same experience that I just described. And I've had people tell me that sounds like, in some cases, the symptoms for right ventricle failure. So, based off those two indicators, I'm happy enough to say it was likely that. I'm not positive, but I think I could say with some certainty that what prompted this was right ventricle failure. Now, it doesn't take a fool to understand and comprehend that a right ventricle failure is a serious issue. And in both cases, that is the one that occurred in my past that I recalled. And if this indeed was another case of that event, I am extremely lucky to still be alive. People generally do not recover from that. If your right ventricle is starting to completely fail on you, that's pretty much good night, so long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, all that fun stuff. So if that's the case, that means I've escaped almost certain death now twice from events that I just know about. This is notwithstanding the week prior, where I was having a lot of issues with my health, including fainting and collapsing. I was fainting repeatedly just playing video games, falling into my chair, and passing out. Oh, and I do want to put a plug in for video games. They're a wonderful thing to have when you're suffering from a disability and you have just time to kill. There's been so many times I'll be playing Civilization and it's 4 o'clock when I start, then I look at the clock again and suddenly it's like 2 a.m. I'm like, whoops, I forgot to eat anything. So, hey, that's pretty good. But last week I was actually fainting during the game, and I would wake up and come to like an hour later, leaning over the, what do you call it, the chair guard, the chair railing. So I'd be way over on my right side, leaning into the chair railing or guard, whatever you call that. And I'd have to peel myself off it, and that was excruciatingly painful. One fall last week, I know, did bruise or break some ribs on top of everything else that happened after that I just shared. So it's been, unfortunately, a long week of a lot of suffering, of fainting, of severe edema as well, swelling in my feet and legs. That's extraordinarily painful. I just got reminded of it just now because I moved my feet were positioned and it hurt like a son of a gun, because edema is very painful. And that's obviously ongoing. When my CNH gets here, I'm going to probably ask her to do an edema massage, which is extraordinarily painful, where they push the blood that's kind of popped up in the area that's in pain and swelling up, and try to push it back up towards the heart to recirculate it. It works, it relieves the pain, and it pushes the blood back to circulation, but doing it is extremely painful. And a lot of workout, too, for the person who's doing it. So I get to look forward to that today. Yay. I get to look forward to more extreme pain as I go through an edema massage to try to push the fluid out of my feet and out of my lower legs. So all that's occurred as well, just prior to this happening. And I am disturbed not knowing precisely, not for sure what happened with the all-body pain. I can only say something happened. Something bad happened. And my body was screaming to me that something was wrong. And there was nothing I could do about it. No painkillers brought down the pain. No one I could talk to. The nurses didn't know what to do. Only next option was 911, but I couldn't do that because I've got a little dog to care for. Honestly, if I didn't have the little dog, I absolutely would have called 911. It was that severe. And like I just said now, on the heels of a long week of fainting. And that's from lack of blood flow, and also a problem when the pressures in the heart equalize too closely and cause the heart to stop. And you just basically go flat. And luckily my body restarts. The pressures go back a little bit to where they were, allowing the heart to pump again. And I stay alive so far. That's how it's happened. But every time I faint, there's a good risk, a solid risk, that I'll never wake up ever again. And I'm living through that almost daily. And I don't know what this was that caused all this pain. I wish I knew for sure. I'm only speculating. I wish I knew, because it is quite scary. And I wish when things like that happen, I had something to do other than just to call a hospice nurse who shows up and doesn't do anything. So, it's very troubling, and it's been a very troubling week. What can I say? Heart failure really sucks. Yet, through all these issues, I'm lucky. I'm still alive, and I am thankful for that. I can put down my podcast and what I'm doing and go back to civilization and show Gandhi what's up. Thankfully, I still have that. And I still have good food. That's always important. So, with that, I'll probably bring this week's episode to a close now. It's really just a summary of what I've been dealing with lately and the pain and the suffering that this disease has with it. It's, I think, something that's not well known and not well appreciated by the public, that it can actually be severely troubling and painful and limiting in what you can do in your actions. And needless to say, it is hard to live with, especially knowing with each and every day it could be your very last. So, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it except make sure that each passing day I tell some people who I love that I love them. I make my dog happy with some playtime. And I make myself happy with some playtime at the game. Or do something creative I enjoy. Or read a good book. Because at least I'm still here. At least I can still engage in those things. And you bet I will. Until, I guess, that final moment. When I faint just one last time. So thank you all for listening to the podcast and to my situation and the things that I am going through. I definitely appreciate it. I think in a large extent this might help to educate the public as to what this disease is and how it feels and how it is to suffer through it. And so I thank you deeply for listening to it. I really mean it. I appreciate all my listeners from the bottom of my heart and couldn't possibly thank you enough for chiming in and sharing it with others who you know who might enjoy this as well. I absolutely appreciate it. So don't forget to click on follow and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next podcast. Note that when you click follow, you're not told there's a new podcast. You have to turn on notifications. And it's about different for each application you use. Of course, they have to make it typical. But just following does nothing. So you have to turn on notifications to know when the next podcast comes out. And that applies to all your podcasts, not just mine. Just it's a little FYI. And if you really want to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/mydogwilleatmyface. And you can show your support there with a little shekel. But, like I said, above all, I really appreciate more than anything your listenership and value you chiming in and bearing with my incessant rambling. And with that, I will bid you adieu through this week and say ciao for now.